Good evening, friends. This is Brenda Green. I wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about being a small business owner and planning for um, the unknown. Uh, this year in 2024, I've had several things happen this year. Being a small business owner, I really hadn't planned ahead um, and thought about until moments happened. For example, earlier this year, I found out I had a hearing deficit in my right ear. And when I went to have my hearing checked, found out I needed to have a hearing aid. So I had to have that addressed and got a hearing aid, and I'm doing great now. But then I started, I went in for other medical stuff, and being a small business owner and not having staff and thinking about who's going to cover for me when things happen that are out of your control and you need to have someone cover for you. Luckily, I have an amazing spouse in my situation who was able to step in. But for this specific story, so this year to kind of like categorize what's happened, it was my hearing loss. Then the next thing that happened was I found out I had melanoma. So I had a good chunk of my leg taken out on my left leg, and so was dealing with that. So hearing, then melanoma, and then went in for an emergency procedure. I had to go to the emergency room. Was in the hospital for 4 days for gallbladder. So that's what really affected our business because that happened in August. And I really didn't have a plan. Like, what would happen if I got sick or something happened where I could not run the business? So I can't stress enough how important it is for you to have a plan in place in case you get sick and you're not able to run your business. Like I said, I don't have staff. I have an amazing husband. So what happened on August 22nd, 2024, I was not feeling well at 1:30 in the morning. Um, I didn't feel good. I was vomiting. I thought maybe it would go away. I've had situations like this over the years and just kind of chucked it off as to, it's just an abnormality. And then, like within a half an hour to an hour, I felt better. However, this time was a little bit different. So from 1:30 to like 4:30, I wasn't feeling well. So at 4:30, I finally talked to my husband and I said, okay, I need to go to the emergency room. Something's wrong. At that time, we had 3 rooms that were staying at our bed and breakfast. And luckily, 2 of the rooms were from guests that um, stay here all the time. So I was able to text that guest and say, hey, I'm going to the emergency room. I'm unable to do breakfast. This is what's going on. The other guest was actually leaving early and taking a flight out of our town. So they weren't going to do breakfast anyways. So, gosh, that light's awful bright. Sorry about that. So, my husband took me to the hospital and found out that I um, had a gallbladder issue and it needed to be removed. But before they could remove it, they had to do another procedure to get out the gallstones in my bile duct. So, long story short about that, I actually had um, been in the hospital for 4 days. So my husband had to step up and actually run the business all by himself, do all the cooking and cleaning. Now, granted, he had left his work um, in July, so like a month before, and he was just helping me out and then he was doing some online courses. So he wasn't fully running the business by himself. But by gosh, he stepped up, and I am so very, very lucky that he was able to do that. But I didn't have a plan in place. Like if it wasn't for his ability to take over the business and just kind of run with it and run it for me, I just can't even tell you how very fortunate I feel. Um, he, um, so he took me to the hospital. I was there for 4 days. I got released. I was very naive in thinking that I could, take a day or two and then come back and run the business. But goodness, this was my gallbladder was actually the worst. that my good doctor had ever seen in his career, and he'd been in the business almost 30 years. Um, I had over 100 gallstones in my gallbladder. It was very, very sick. I was very sick. And so before they could remove the gallbladder, they had to go in and clean out my bile duct and put a stent in. Um, this whole thing knocked me out for a good 6 weeks. So my husband had pretty much run the business by himself for 3 weeks. And then I would go in and try to help cook breakfast and try to, after 3 weeks. But then after I did breakfast for my guests, I would be in bed. Like he had to go and clean rooms. And luckily for us, my mother in law had moved here in 2021 and she comes to help out. She's in her mid 70s and she has, come over repeatedly to help me out cleaning rooms. And I can't say no to help. So luckily that she would help and she helped Rob clean rooms and kind of get things ready for guests because it was during our busy season. We don't start slowing down until the middle of October. And this happened August 22nd. So, needless to say, I kept trying to push myself to feel good enough to help out, but in the long run, it didn't work out that way. Um, so, people who are small business owners who don't have staff to like fall back on or rely on, I can't preach enough about how important it is to have a backup plan. Um, Luckily, I was in a situation where my husband was able to step up and help out in cleaning. It took me, like I said, it was 4 weeks before I could really help out, and then a good 6 weeks before I started feeling better. And I had every complication. I ended up going back for multiple tests. I had a cyst on my pancreas because I didn't realize that your pancreas is very sensitive. And because your gallbladder sits right under your pancreas, any type of contact with the pancreas can make it flare up. And I ended up having what was called a pseudocyst that was 5 inches in diameter. I was very fortunate that my body absorbed that and I didn't have to have an extra procedure. And I would have had to actually go out of town to have that procedure into a bigger city. And then that would have been, taking time off work and closing down the business for a few days. Luckily, that didn't happen. I went back in and the CT scan showed that it had been absorbed by my body. So thank goodness for that. But as a small business owner, it is important for you to have plans in place for worst case scenario, things that happen. If you get ill, like we were very fortunate during the pandemic that we didn't get ill. And when we did get sick, that we thought maybe we had the virus, but we don't know because we didn't test for it at that time because we were both sick and just at home. We thought maybe it kind of mimicked the symptoms of flu. So it was during our off season. We weren't busy. We just shut the business down for a couple days. Luckily, we didn't have reservations at that point. Um, but anybody who is in a business where they're running it as a sole business person and not having staff, it is really important to plan for the worst, plan for things that are out of your control. When I got released from the hospital after being in the hospital for 4 days, I actually went on our booking calendar and blocked off days. So whatever reservations were there, we honored those reservations, but we weren't taking new reservations. And that really helped my husband kind of manage the business while I was recovering from my surgery and all the complications that followed through with that. So being a small business owner, there's so many different things to think about. And sometimes you don't think about planning ahead until you either hear someone else that had done it and you're like, oh, I better learn from that, learn from others, and kind of put a plan in place. We didn't do that and we kind of fumbled through that. Luckily, everything turned out great. We had some amazing guests that had stayed here and that were very supportive of my husband. And we're able to navigate that. But now we have a plan in place for if something ever did happen to one of us, especially me, if I'm running the business 90% of the time, I need to have somebody who can step up and run the business while I'm down and out. Um, and that's just something that we hadn't planned for. So planning for the unforeseen when you're a small business owner is really important. So just wanted to jump on here real quick and talk about that. So if you have questions, please leave them down below in the comment section or email me. You're more than welcome to email me anytime. I will answer all emails. So take care and have a great night. It is election night and we're just waiting for results, and fingers crossed it goes the way I want. But if not, I'm accepting of that, and we will move forward and we will be okay. We will stand by each other and support each other and work through it. All right. So you take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.